Alright, so I'm working on a Turbo Duo again. I just finished doing the caps on it and retested, everything's fine. And I'm going to do the region mod to it. And I've been sitting on this for a week or so, but I've made a new chip for it. Very tiny. And the chip that goes on it's even smaller. I can already see that I need to redesign it, as my vias up here that I solder the pins to don't quite have enough meat on them. Anyway, I'm going to show you how to install this PCB. I will probably not offer this as a kit. This might be another PCB that I offer up to Stone Age Gamer for them to sell, and of course it will come with that chip already soldered on, and then you just follow this video on how to solder it in, and it's actually going to be fairly easy. So let's get to it. Okay, so as I said, I've already done caps, and this is the surface mount cap version. You don't have to use surface mounts. I say this is actually a requirement, if I'm being honest. On most Turbo Duos, the caps are leaking and failing. The black versions, the Duo R, the Duo RX, they're probably fine. But all Duos, I say it's a requirement to replace these caps before you go doing a country switch mod. And I will say that for one reason is these caps back here will be hidden by the PCB, at least that one right there anyway, will be hidden by the PCB that we're going to install. So you're definitely going to change that out before doing this. And of course, after you do the cap job, get in there and retest it and make sure everything's good to go before you get in here and start hiding stuff again and whatnot. So next tool required would be some kind of cutters. We're actually going to cut the pins here. This is how almost all Duos are country switch modded right now. I don't like it. I think cutting these pins is a bad idea. If you screw it up, like if the pin breaks off up here towards the plastic, this whole connector needs to come out. And I think it's the same as a TG61, but I could be wrong. Otherwise you're just going to have to steal it from another console. It's not an off-the-shelf part. So I like to use my X-Lights. This is the 170D ESD safe. I've had a few pairs of these. I tend to cut things that are too hard for them and wear them out, but the nice pointy tip right here is perfect for doing stuff like this. But I think you could probably get away with something just a little bit cruder. These are Craftsman. This was the 3-piece set. It came with these, and it came with some long needle nose that are non-serrated. And I can't remember, it was like a mini plier set or something like that. Had them forever. But these will probably get in there and do the job if you just do a little pushing. However, I have these, so this is what I'm going to use. And let's see, what else? We are going to cut all in the same line where the shorter pin is. And what I mean by that, if you look at it from the side, these are the longer pins out here, and then the shorter ones are about halfway down. We're going to cut them all the same length, mostly for ease of installation of anything. And we're going to cut not 8 but 9 pins. With this circuit board, I am actually going to capture pin 18 as well. So I've got pins here for 15 through 23. Okay, so basically you come down here and you look for pin 15, and the longer ones, there's a marking right here, it says pin 1, so the longer one is pin 1. So every other one is an odd 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13, 15. So 15 is right there. And I'm going to cut it down here in the middle. I'll go ahead and lift that so you get some idea where I cut it. Right there. And then you're just going to go right down the row. Once the first one's cut, it's easier to get to the rest. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. Now, the pins that go down to the motherboard are not long enough to come up to the circuit board. So I'm just going to heat them up and pull them out, or I guess you could use a desoldering gun, but then you run the risk of sucking the pin up into the desoldering gun. And the pins that are still attached to the connector are going to be bent straight up. Like so. Okay. And basically the circuit board is just going to fit right down onto those pins. Wiggle them in there like that, and they're all sticking through, and they'll be easy to solder to. And then comes a part where some people might have a little trouble with this. You've seen me pull this out several times, but this is just capacitors and resistors, the legs, the through-hole kind of components. You know, you cut the excess off, that's what you're left with. Now on this mod, if you're doing the caps, you're going to have those legs from these caps, because these are so big you can't get them in ceramic, and you can just simply use those, and you'll just use 9 of them. And basically what we'll do is we'll heat up these legs that are still soldered to the motherboard, and it'd be best to clear out the hole first, probably, and then we'll solder in some straight pins, some long ones, and they'll actually just come up straight from where they were at and come right up to the circuit board. Alright, I've got 9 of those counted out over here. Kind of set those aside. And I think I'll be able to pull these out from the top. Okay, so you could easily heat that from the bottom side and pull from this side. It just saves you from having to stand that board up. Now, to get those holes clear of solder, there's a few things you could do. Obviously, using a Heiko 808 is what I'm going to do, just because I have one. Plug that in now, get it hot, and you can also use a very cheap Chinese solder sucker. They work okay, kind of a tight spot too. Another option is to use a little drill bit. I think I got these from Granger or MSC a long time ago. This is actually a Starrett brand pin vise, and then you can order the was it 61 through 80 is the really tiny drill bits. I couldn't exactly tell you what size this one is, but I happen to know it's just right about the right size. for clearing out such holes. So it's somewhere in the vicinity of 30 or 31 thousandths. That sounds about right. And you could probably go smaller. This works really well if the solder sucker doesn't get everything out. Just zip this through and finish it off. And if it's like overflowing with solder, like these are, it's not quite my first choice. Trying to drill a hole through a dome is not as easy as through a concave hole there, like that one right there. That one's concave, that would be easiest to drill through, but anyway, I'm gonna let this 808 heat up and then I'll suck them out of there. Okay, so the 808's hot. There we go. Now they are all cleared out. Alright, so this part, I'm still a little unsure of the best practice here. And there are traces and such on the bottom side, so we want to keep it from touching anything. But I want to say probably solder the pins on the hue card side first, trying to prop it a little bit maybe. It might just be because I've not bent those pins all the way. Yeah, there's just enough drill size there that the PCB will wiggle up and down. Yeah, I should be able to hold it horizontal like that somehow and get one of these pins soldered. Yep, that'll hold it in place. And then get our capacitor leg put through here. Luckily they're just falling down right in place. That makes it a little easier having the needle nose. You can definitely tell when they hit the hole on the motherboard, fall down another little bit. So for that reason it's beneficial to have an inch or so long legs. So many dirty jokes you could say right now. Can't find the hole. Alright, so I know they're down through the hole in the motherboard, so soldering them here Shouldn't be that difficult. And yes, now I'm just realizing that I really should have put the 383 on. The 3383, this chip. Really should have put that on there before I soldered it down here. Wondering how well a drag solder would work here. Almost. Probably could use a little flux. There we go. Pretty tight quarters in there. And obviously you want to get the pins soldered to the motherboard. I'm sure there's plenty of clearance to the heat sink on the bottom, but it can't hurt to trim these down. Make sure they're about level with the chips or whatever. Make sure any little pieces don't get stuck there like those did. There's a lot of flux on the bottom of the board, so metal fragments tend to stick down there. That looks good. So, yeah, same thing on the top side. Okay. Well, luckily I still have plenty of room all the way around that chip. Soldering it down shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so, well, and yes, definitely, if I sell this kit to Stone Age Gamer, this chip will already be soldered down. And I think something else I missed was adding a power bypass cap to this board. And I think that's because my last design also didn't have it. May have added too much solder that time. There we go, that looks better. Much better. But I will break out the old 10x loop and get a closer look and make sure. Okay, everything looks good. It still amazes me that it's that easy to solder something that looks that intimidating. Just flux and a little practice and not that big of a deal. Okay, so there's still 4 pads left to solder to here. And these 3 down here are going to go to a switch. Single pole, double throw. Just like that. 3 pads, 3 legs of the switch. Whether I include a switch into the kit, that could be a question that needs answered. Because not everybody's going to use the same switch. As a matter of fact, I don't know that I use this switch for the Duo normally. I've got an Atari looking toggle switch. You know, it's got that silver shaft on it. I think I've got access to one. Yeah, let me dig it out. Here's the one that I normally put on the Duo. It's actually a double pole, double throw. But I just use one of the middle pins, obviously. And maybe I'll show you this when it's done installed, but why I use this. It's mostly because I can put it in a certain place on the back of the Duo and have easy access to that. But I've also seen people put that little switch up around the Hue card slot on the top cover underneath the Hue card cover. I like that a lot too. I don't know that the customer of this console has actually told me which way he'd like to do it, so I'll have to get back with you on that one. Alright, so there is a separate pad over here just for VCC or power plus 5 volts, and we want to get it from a certain regulator. I believe there's 2 regulators. I think one of them supplies most of the power to the CD player. I could be wrong about that, but I do know I want to pull from this one, and the easy way is to check where that comes to. So down here on, looks like capacitor 914 on the forward side of it. And I usually add a little glop of solder to that cap to make it easy to solder wire to. Of course, I can pre-tin these like so, and then, you know, cut a 4 or 5 inch wire to run down to here. Then, as usual, I usually tin the leads. Don't have to use flux, I just happen to do it that way. If you have flux core solder, not necessary. Alrighty, that wire can lay down in there whichever way, no big deal. Now the question of the switch. I want to say I was using 9 inches, and I think that was extremely excessive for the distance it has to go until you factor in, like if it's back here in the corner where I usually put it, until you factor in having that top lid off and laid off to the side, and then that's when that makes sense. Well, the owner said he didn't really care which one I did, and I kind of already showed how to do the one on the back, although I watched the video and it was kind of in fast forward motion, and I do it different now. Basically, I just get my I think it's a 1/4 inch drill bit, and I put 2 holes in the inside plastic, and then I just use my files to square it off so that this switch will fit. But I think I'm going to try to do the hidden switch, and one thing that I want to be sure of here is that I can position it properly. And what I mean by that is I want to put a cue card in there. Let me get this thing down on there, right? There we go. That'll give me some idea of where the switch can live. And of course, if the door is in position as well, you want to give a slight idea of how far it's going to stick down. So probably just want to get it somewhere just above the Hue card. I mean, there's plenty of room in there. It is going to be rather difficult to make that look nice, just because of the angle of trying to get your file or whatever in there to make it look like a nice little square. But I'm up for the challenge, something new, something different. Well, the only way I can really figure to do this is do it just about the way that I always do it. Although it would be nice if I had a really long drill bit. Because I still have to come in at an angle. If that drill bit were really long, I could come back with the drill quite a ways. And trying to drill at an angle just means that the drill will probably want to walk. And it'll probably want to walk down, so I want to watch that. And this one's just sharp enough that it's not a problem. Now I normally drill 2 holes and then come back in with the file. Gotta watch that edge right there so the drill doesn't mar it up, and I believe I was successful. Get the X lights back in there and snip out some of that plastic. Then take my little square file, get in there, and attempt to make it look as square as possible. Alright, so it wasn't much to watch. That is extremely difficult. Trying to get that long file in there at just the right angle. Yeah, very difficult. And probably not ever just going to look super perfect. I had a customer ask me about doing that, and he showed somebody else's work and said that it wasn't good enough, and I looked at it and I thought, well, it looks pretty good to me for as difficult as that is probably is to do. And now that I've done it, yeah, it's very difficult. So my vote is still for a switch back here for easeability, easy to install. But if definitely you want the hidden look, keep that back looking stock, and that's how you would go. Okay, so it looks to me like a 9-inch piece is going to be plenty long. And I've made the pads so that it'll just be 3 for 3. We pre-tin these. Cut off the ends, the solder tends to ball on the end of the wire when you pre-tin them. Okay, solder this down. Easy enough. And then the other 3 solder to the PCB. And what I meant for that 3 for 3 is basically the middle wire is the switch wire, and the other 2 can be power and ground. I think I need to increase the size of those pads and maybe spread them out, or maybe thin them up and elongate them. That might be best. I mean, that was okay, but for public use, for somebody that's not got the best soldering setup or whatever, I might make those a little bit bigger on the redesign. I only had 3 made just because I knew I was going to find some things I wanted to redo about it. I'll also probably add a 0.1 microfarad cap right to the PCB, kind of a bodge on. Now the last part about this switch is to simply super glue it to that hole. And I think what I might do first is, before I solder that on and make it permanent, the best thing is to test it. Since it's all wired up, everything looks good, we can slap this into the bottom half of the console, hook up power, even hook up the CD if you wanted to. That's already been tested, don't really care about that. And then try a couple games. Let's do that. Okay. Hook up power. That switch off there so it doesn't short to something. I'm not going to worry about hooking up the CD-ROM. Left the power on. Alright, US game. Looks good. Now, if you hit the switch, power it back on, that's what you'll see. A colored screen. Probably shouldn't be changing colors. That's probably my PVM is needing some work. So that's a good thing. Insert the PC Engine game. There you go. Works like a charm. Excellent. So now we can super glue that switch down. Alright, well, I will admit I use Gorilla Glue super glue gel. Come on, camera. Pretty exclusively for mounting switches that I don't mount with screws. It seems to hold really well as long as you get enough applied. Put some pressure on it. I always let it sit for 10 or 20 seconds, just like this, before I even put it onto the surface. Doesn't matter, back to front. It does matter if there is enough room for the switch to actuate, so you want to check that by looking through the visible side. Make sure you can see a little bit of the silver of the case of the switch. Yeah, I keep losing contact here. I don't exactly have a perfectly flat surface there. Bend up one end just a little bit here. That'll help. And I like to keep pressure on it, even if it's just light pressure, for about a minute. Okay, so I'm done holding it, but I'll also let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes. I really let it solidify. And just because I don't have a lot of contact area, I'm probably going to go back in and add some more super glue to the sides, and I'll probably show that. Alright, I think you can see that pretty well. Give the gel glue a little shake. I'm trying to avoid getting it too far in to the sides because the sides are not closed, and the actuator is actually open on the sides and can touch the super glue. And I think I already have. Move it down this way. I don't think I got as much on this end. Yeah, I'm a little worried that I got too much on this end. But I have also not had much problems unsticking it by moving the lever, actuator, or whatever. So now I'm going to let that sit for a very long time because that stuff is extremely thick, although it's probably okay to put together, honestly, because I let the first application dry overnight and this isn't going to touch anything. But yeah, if you're worried about it, let it sit for an hour or so, let it solidify. But I think I will actually move on and get this thing all the way put back together. And there's really nothing to show there. Oh, I wanted to put that cap on too. I'll get that done and get her back together and retest. Well, I had the bright idea to get this power bypass cap on here is to scrape away some of the solder mask right here next to the VCC pin, and I can check for ground, and it's ground, which I knew it was. Just want to be extra sure, and that way I can throw on a little surface mount cap like so. That'll be between VCC and ground. So I'll get that done and then we can button it back up. And if anybody was worried about the shield touching the PCB, it does not. Really hard to get on camera, but I can actually look through the HuCard side of this opening here and actually see the only thing touching is that ribbon cable. I can't even actually see the PCB over the HuCard connector, so it is definitely far enough away from it. So no need to, insulate the shield from it with tape or whatever. It's not even close. Okay, all back together. Looks like forward is Jap. Push it forward for US. Solid color screen. Put in US game. Good to go. No HuCard. CD-ROM. Japanese position, no HuCard. CD-ROM. Okay, so that seems to be all good to go. I'm going to go ahead and let it run for a while, of course, just for testing, and then also do the same thing for the CD side. But yeah, I think I'll definitely get that PCB redesigned and talk to Stone Age Gamer about if they want to be a part of the sales of this kit. I can't really see a lot being a part of the kit other than the PCB, maybe the switch, but honestly, it's too much up to your personal opinion of what way you want to do it, or where you want to put it, all that kind of stuff. So, and if you're doing this kind of mod anyway, you're probably, able to figure that part out on your own, you know what I mean? So we might just do the PCB only for now anyway. And again, I don't know pricing or nothing like that. We'll figure that out later. But yeah, I think this is a definite go. It's a win for me. It was so much easier this way than any other way I've tried. And I shot some more video about what inspired me to do it this way. So I'll probably post a second video here soon. Just some of the things that I've went through with it, over the years and doing the installs, and I'll show you a couple of pictures of how other people do it. And I think there might be one other kit available out there, and it's just the same thing where you got a bunch of wires and you got to solder them to those pins that get cut on the HuCard connector. It's a mess. So stay tuned for that.